This is my last message and maybe the most honest one I've ever written. I don't know if you will read this. I don't know if it will matter to you. But for me, it means everything because this is not just a message. This is everything I never said, everything I kept inside, everything I felt but never showed. For a long time, I stayed quiet, not because I didn't have words, but because I was afraid. Afraid of saying too much, afraid of losing you, afraid that my feelings would change everything between us. So I chose silence, even when my heart was full, even when I wanted to tell you how much you meant to me, even when every part of me wanted to say, you are important to me. But now that silence feels heavier than any truth I could have spoken. Because sometimes the things we don't say stay with us longer than the things we do. And maybe that's why I'm writing this today. Not to change anything, not to go back, not to fix what's already broken, but just to be honest one last time. You were never just someone in my life. You became a part of my routine, my thoughts, my days, my nights, without even trying, without even realizing it. You became someone I looked forward to, someone I wanted to talk to, someone who made everything feel a little easier. And I never said it, not properly, not honestly, because I thought there was time. Time to express, time to explain, time to make you understand. But life doesn't always give us that time. Sometimes it changes suddenly. People change, distances grow, and before you know it, everything becomes different. That's what happened to us. At least, that's how it felt to me. One day, everything was normal. And then slowly, it wasn't. The conversations became shorter. The connection felt weaker. The warmth started fading. And I noticed it. But I didn't say anything because I was scared of the answer. Scared that if I asked, I would hear something I wasn't ready for. So I stayed silent. And maybe that silence became our ending. There were so many moments I wanted to tell you the truth, to say how much I cared, to say how much I valued you, to say how much your presence meant to me. But I waited and waited and waited until one day there was nothing left to say because you were already gone. And maybe that is the hardest part, not losing you suddenly, but realizing that I had so much to say and no time left to say it. So today I am saying everything, not because I expect anything in return, not because I want you to come back, but because my heart deserves to be honest, even if it's too late, even if it changes nothing. You mattered to me more than you will ever know, more than I ever showed, more than I ever admitted. And maybe that is something I will always carry, not as regret, but as truth. In this message, this is not just a goodbye, it is a confession, a real one, the kind that comes when there is nothing left to lose. Because sometimes we only become honest when it's already over. After writing all of that, I stopped, not because I had nothing more to say, but because I finally felt everything I had been avoiding for so long. I thought silence was strength. I thought hiding my feelings would protect me. I thought if I didn't say too much, I wouldn't lose you. But now I understand something painful. Silence didn't protect me. It slowly took everything away because while I was staying quiet, while I was holding everything inside, things were already changing. You were already drifting away, and I didn't stop it. Not because I didn't care, but because I didn't know how to speak. That realization, it hurts in a different way. Not like missing you, not like losing you, but like understanding that maybe I had a chance to say something and I didn't. There were so many moments I remember now, moments where I felt something deeply, moments where I wanted to tell you the truth, but I stopped myself. I told myself, not now. Later, there will be a better time. But that later never came because life doesn't wait for the perfect moment, and sometimes the moment passes before we even realize it. I kept thinking about one question tonight. What if I had told you everything? Would things have been different? Would you have stayed? Would we still be talking? But the more I thought about it, the more I understood something important. Maybe not. Maybe things would still end the same way. Because not everything breaks because of silence. Sometimes people just change, feelings change, life moves in different directions, and no matter how much you try, you can't hold on to something that is already letting go. That truth didn't make the regret disappear, but it made it softer because I stopped blaming myself completely. I stopped thinking it's all my fault and started understanding maybe it was never meant to stay. And maybe that's something I needed to accept. I looked at everything I had written again, every word, every line, every feeling, and I realized something. This message is not just about you, it's about me too, about the person I became in this story, the one who loved quietly, the one who stayed even when things felt different, the one who held on longer than they should have. And maybe that person deserves something too, deserves understanding, deserves forgiveness, because loving someone sincerely is never a mistake, even if it ends like this, even if it turns into memories instead of a future, even if it leaves you with questions instead of answers. It still matters because it was real, and real things, they change you, they shape you, they teach you things you wouldn't learn otherwise. And you you taught me something I will never forget. You taught me how deeply I can feel, how honestly I can care, and how painful it is to let go of something that once felt like everything. And even though it didn't last, that lesson will stay with me, not as pain, but as growth, because now I know something I didn't know before. Next time, I won't stay silent. Next time, I will say what I feel. Next time, I won't wait for the perfect moment because I know now sometimes that moment never comes. And even though there might not be a next time with you, there will be a next time in life, a new beginning, a new connection, a new story. And maybe this time I will be different, stronger, more honest, more open because of what I learned from losing you. And tonight, as I sit here with this message almost complete, there is one truth I can't ignore. This is not just the end of something, it is also the beginning of understanding myself. The message is complete. Now, every word written, every feeling finally spoken, everything I once kept inside, now laid out in front of me, and still I sit here looking at it, reading it again and again, not to change anything, not to fix anything, but to feel it, to truly understand what I'm about to let go of, because this this is not just a message. This is a goodbye to everything we were, everything we could have been, everything I once believed in, and letting go of that. It's not easy. It never is. I keep thinking about how it all started, how simple it was, how natural everything felt, how I never planned to feel this way. It just happened quietly, slowly, without asking me. You became important without trying. You became part of my routine without effort. And somewhere along the way, you became someone I couldn't imagine losing. But life doesn't always follow what we imagine. Sometimes it writes its own story, and sometimes that story ends differently than we hoped. I used to think that endings are loud, full of arguments, full of words, full of explanations. But now I know some endings are silent. They don't come with closure. They don't come with reasons. They just happen. And before you even realize it, everything is over. That's what happened here. There was no big goodbye, no final conversation, no moment where we both said, "This is the end." It just faded, and I was left holding on to something that was already gone. But tonight, that changes because I am no longer holding on. Not because I stopped caring, but because I finally understand something my heart refused to accept. Love, it's not about holding someone who doesn't stay. It's not about waiting for someone who doesn't return. It's not about losing yourself just to keep a connection alive. Love, it's also about knowing when to let go, even when it hurts, even when every part of you wants to hold on. And tonight, I am choosing that. I am choosing to let go, not of the memories, not of the feelings, but of the hope that kept me stuck. The hope that maybe things would change. The hope that maybe one day you would come back. Because now I understand if you were meant to stay, you would have. And that truth, it doesn't break me anymore. It frees me because it gives me something I didn't have before, clarity. And clarity, it brings peace. Slowly, gently, but surely, I look at your name one last time. Not with pain, not with longing, but with something softer, something quieter, something that feels like acceptance. Because you were not a mistake. You were not something I regret. You were a part of my life that mattered. A chapter that changed me. A feeling that taught me something real. And for that, I will always be thankful, even if it didn't last, even if it ended like this. Because not every story is meant to continue forever. Some stories are meant to teach us something and then end.